I started in American Express. 3 months later, got the role. In the first 2 months, I broke the first 6 months, I broke the company record. In the first year, I was a top 1% revenue generator, not just in Australia, but worldwide, and then backed that up 4 years in a row. And I very much put that down to two things. One, first of all, the work ethic that I developed in recruitment. And second of all, becoming pedantic and obsessed around asking better questions to get better outcomes.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me. And what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast From Lambs to Lions, where we help you build everything that you can from the weak and submissive places to strong and businesses that can take on the world. I'm very, very, humbled to be joined here by Hugh Grover. Welcome, mate.
Thanks for having me, Rhys. Really excited to be here.
Mate, it's pretty cool to connect, I guess, from a social media platform, and then within a week later, we're on a pod together. It's pretty
podding together.
Yeah.
We're podding together. And I'm sorry for the listeners listening in. I was actually meant to be at your doorstep in Melbourne until we both realised that neither of us had communicated that we're in the same state. Yeah. But given it's a podcast, the great thing is we can do this virtually.
And that's it, bro. Like, I think it's so many and so often, like we kind of get, especially over the last 2 years, dude, we've got so used to just like having these virtual conversations. It's kind of a little bit of a blast from the past now, just having to do it, but we'll make it work. I'm going to give the people at home a little bit of an overview. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere along the way, and then I think we'll try and dive into your story. But from what I've read, Hugh has been a top 1% salesman in a Fortune 100 company. He's grown up as a budding entrepreneur selling Coke cans at high school, and
he's done his research
and has come into a place where he's now able to help other business owners and other people in sales really upskill and improve their ability to sell at a really high degree. So, did I miss anything there?
That at a high level, that's pretty good.
Excellent, cool. Let's dive into the details of it, bro. Like, You've obviously got a really big passion for sales, and I'd imagine that also means a big passion for people in general, because I don't think anyone worth their salt in the sales game can do it without actually knowing and liking people to a degree. So let's talk about kind of where that came from and what started your journey in sales.
Yeah, I think the first reason was I just graduated at university and I got an undergrad role at a fairly known blue chip company, and it was paying $39,000. Wow. And before I took the job, Mum said to me, she goes, "Hey, you've got to meet with this really slick recruiter called Andrew State, just to kind of get some ideas around career development, how to play your first 2 to 3 years in the grad program before you kind of start." So I walked into these offices at this recruitment company called SHK. And met with Andrew, this really slick guy, probably about 40 years old, wearing a beautiful Armani suit in this gorgeous office space. And we talked for about 45 minutes to an hour. And at the end of the conversation, he goes, "Have you ever thought of working in recruitment?" And I thought to myself, first of all, I haven't heard about recruitment and what it even is. And second of all, no, not really. And he then responds and goes, "Hey, what would you need to change to potentially kind of work in recruitment?" I said, "Oh, I'm not sure. Like maybe I've just graduated uni, maybe money." And he goes, "What are you earning at the company I was going to be working for?" And I said, "Oh, about 38K." And he kind of leaned back in his chair and he goes, "Is that all?" and I thought the same thing. I kind of laughed. And he goes, "How would you feel if in your first year you're on a base salary of 80 grand and had the potential to earn up to $200,000 in your first 12 or 24 months?" And me as a 21-year-old kid jumped at this opportunity. I tore up the contract with the other company and ended up signing on the dotted line with SHK. And it was by far the best thing I have ever done and the worst thing I have ever done for reasons that I didn't think would be the best and worst.
I would assume the best being more long-term and the worst being short-term, because recruitment being what it is and the rejection you get and how cutthroat it is.
100%. The one thing that I was told about was there'd be a lot of career development. I think in my first day, I was given a white pages and told to call 200 business owners. And I remember on about like the third week, like I'm 3 weeks in now, I'm hating this. I think I'm calling mum crying every Friday afternoon, but like, why did you get me to meet this guy called Andrew State? You've ruined my life. Like, I had this great prospect with this blue chip Australian company. People had found it really hard to get on this program. I've turned it down to try and make more money. And I think that's another lesson in itself. Never chase the money, because when you chase the money inevitably doesn't come. But at the time, the best thing I learned from SHK was over 2 years, every day, called 200 people, day in, day out. Didn't matter whether it was a good day, didn't matter if it was a bad day. I would call people. So I got the reps in, and over the course of 2 years, was the youngest ever graduate within the company. The median age was 40. I was 21. And so the one thing I learned from SHK was very much around the work ethic to become successful. However, the one thing I hadn't developed at that stage was the ability to effectively sell. I had the work ethic, which got me so far, but I hadn't developed the ability to effectively sell.
So that would then be where I guess the mental fortitude and resilience comes with, like, consistent rejection, but just not the systems and strategies to convert at a high rate. Like, take away the volume of obviously calling so many people per day. You're bound to hit the purple unicorn and get a few, but not strategy, not systemized.
And this will tie back into towards the end of the conversation. But the one thing that I have observed working with business owners is most of them have an incredible product. They have an incredible service. They are reasonably good at marketing. However, they don't know how to sell. But coupled with not knowing how to sell, they don't even have the amount of reps. So I do coaching for Fortune 100 companies, AFR fast starters, businesses that are scaling really quickly or at the top echelon. But then I go and work with some of the smaller SMEs, and they just don't have the work ethic, let alone the sales skills.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise why I see so many businesses in Australia in particular that suffer as a business because they've never learned the amount of repetition required or the amount of reps plus learning the right skill set to actually be successful. And that was one of the main reasons why I ended up starting my business today, was just seeing that gap in the market and going, hold on a second. Business owners, one, they're not doing the reps. And second of all, they don't have the right skills required to get to where they want to be.
I think in our generation now too, man, that so many people are so avoidant of hard. Like they're not familiar with what real hard is. And it's a conversation I've had with my staff all the time, is like, you know, when we're in the downward turn of maybe we've had a little bit of a higher churn rate than normal and so on, and we have to actually put in the reps to actually acquire customers. And it's like, this is hard. Welcome to hard, right? Yeah. Strap your boots. Let's pack a lunch, because it's not going to change for a while. Yep. And we need to have the resilience to actually pull ourselves out of it. And I think that only comes with time.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Do you buy into the narrative that, like, if you can't sell, you market, and if you can't market, you have to sell harder?
I think I haven't heard that one. I think it's a really good way of looking at it. I think from the people that I've worked with and I've observed, the best marketers have also at some point been the best salespeople. I look at an example, Richard Branson, incredible salesperson, Virgin Records, Virgin Media, Virgin Airlines, salesperson first, toggled to marketing because you can reach more people through marketing. Next example I give you of that is Grant Cardone, yep. Incredible salesperson, but now an even better marketer. Someone that I had speak recently to my community, Gavin Rubenstein, incredible salespeople, now the face of Lux Listing Australia, Sydney, I should say, incredible salesperson, but understands to get a larger reach, you have to be an incredible marketer. And I was listening to a podcast, I think Friday, with Gary Vee, and he goes, the reason why I don't want to sell anymore, or the reason I don't have to sell anymore is because people either like me or they don't, but you've had to get so far in advance with your marketing and your personal brand at such a high level to get to that place.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, for the majority of business owners, 80% of what you need to be able to do is sell. But for that top tier, really at that high end, that's when you become an incredible marketer. You have the best of both worlds. You can market and more people know who you are, and then you can sell at a close rate. But back to your question, the best people that I see that run the best businesses are the best salespeople that toggle into marketing.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that you have to wear the hat. You have to wear the hat regardless of whether you're going to be at a point where you outsource and upskill and so on. If you're not familiar with what wearing the hat looks like and what it feels like, you're not really going to know if it's going right or wrong. And I'd imagine like in that whole process for you going through the whole, I guess, come up of, recruiting, you would have had to wear quite a few hats in that process. Yeah.
Yeah. I think now if I went back into recruiting, I probably would have. I think at the time I was just trying to survive.
How long did you survive?
2 years.
That is impressive.
The average tenure is about 8 months.
Yeah.
So I stuck it out, but after 2 years, I went, I've got what I've needed, which is it on my CV to go for the next opportunity. And I've done the hard work and the resilience, which was the thing that I really wanted to test. It was like, I've fucked up here by taking a job, which I don't think I should have taken now in hindsight. I now have to push myself to go, regardless of the decision I've made, you've got 2 years that you've got to stick this out for. And then after 2 years, if you still don't like it, then you decide to do something else.
In that time, did the money promised ever come to fruition?
Coming back to
I'll ask a better question, probably a better question. Did it come into fruition as easy as it was sold to you?
No way. Yeah. No way. And the naive and not good salesperson at the time, which was me, didn't ask good enough questions to understand how attainable that money was and what was required for me to actually get there. So as much as it was sold into me, it was me being very green at the time and not actually understanding the right questions to ask in that interview to actually get the answer to whether it was actually achievable or not.
I would also say though that like playing devil's advocate, that probably gotten you a very long way. Like that naivety in the, I guess, infancy of your career gave you the exposure to just complete volume and complete turnover and so on. And had you not been put through that, it may have taken you twice as long to build the resilience that you got.
Totally agree. Or potentially not at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it was the best and the worst thing that I've ever done. Because in the short term, it was the worst thing. It wasn't enjoyable. It was extremely stressful. I felt like I was going backwards. So for me at the time in the short term, it was extremely painful. It was extremely challenging. But unless I had had those 2 years of real perseverance, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Yeah.
And in saying that, I'm not where I want to be,
Yep.
but I'm on the journey to it.
Of course. Do you want to give everyone at home just a little bit brief understanding of what recruiting is and what a day in the life looks like? So
effectively, it's a pretty simple job, or you can make it simple. Your job is ultimately to find, similar to a real estate agent, to find jobs to place. So effectively calling up, I'd call up NAB, I'd call up ANZ, find out who the hiring managers were in each category, in marketing, in business, in finance, and effectively develop relationships with them to the point that whenever they were hiring and they couldn't source the talent themselves, they would go to me. So where the other challenge was I was reasonably good on the telephone, but when I met them, I look fairly young now, but when I met them at 21 years old, they would always be like, "Where's Hugh?" Like they thought I was an intern because it was executive recruitment.
Yeah.
So the role was very much find people that are potentially hiring and then find talent to fill that role.
Yep.
And again, similar to real estate agents, it's all about acquiring the listings and then the rest kind of works itself out. And really, the majority of recruiters, they ads up on Seek and LinkedIn. That's where they find the talent. The hard part is actually sourcing the role in the first instance.
And I'd imagine in that case, it's also about building out a bit of a list of contacts too, of like more so about who you know, not so much what you know.
100%. And again, if I was in recruitment now, I'd approach it very differently. For me at the time, it was very transactional. It was very short-term focused. Where now, if I was going to go into recruitment, for anyone on the phone listening to this, I've got some mates that are in recruitment that have done extremely well, run recruitment businesses. I just finished working with the largest FMCG recruitment business in Australia, Miller Leith. Incredible business. Scott Borg, incredible guy. But the thing is, the way I would approach it now is very much about building deep relationships with people, opposed to trying to get lots of quick wins along the way and not forming deep enough relationships.
Yeah. And I think that probably goes to be said with, I think sales as a whole. I think, once you've gone down the road of sales a little bit and you've started to understand that salesmen as a whole have a pretty negative connotation or negative, view in the public eye, right? Moving through that process, knowing that perhaps that's not well suited to you and your own personality, but finding a way to do it ethically and feels good and actually still make money, it becomes far less transactional and actually about getting to know people.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, mate. And that's what you found in your line of work as well?
Yeah, massively, man. That's what, training my staff to sell. It's like the one thing that we're pushing a higher ticket price model in our industry. There was price resistance, this was before we even got it in front of clients. It was price resistance just from a selling aspect because they had not sold at that point. They had not sold at that dollar figure before. And the biggest thing that I have to get them to understand is this is a conversation to help people. If you go into it with a transactional mindset, it's not going to go anywhere because people will see straight through it. And that price resistance will actually flow on to the client and the prospect as well. Right. So if you don't have price confidence, there's going to be infinite resistance on the other end.
Totally great.
Where did you, or how did you rather transition from where you were in recruitment into actually high-end sales?
Cool. So after recruitment, I left with no job prospect. It was kind of November and the year had finished up, and I, for kind of 2 or 3 months, decided I wanted to have some time off. And a mate called Max, who lived in Sydney at the time, I was living in Melbourne, called me up and he said, "Oh, mate, I'm having a house party up in Sydney. Do you want to come up for it?" And me at the time, I go, "Yeah, of course, mate, I'll come up." He had this beautiful, I should say his parents at the time had this beautiful $15 to $18 million house in Bronte overlooking the water. And it was just like a stunning place. And at about 11 o'clock at night, this guy walks into the house and he's wearing this beautiful suit, this tailored suit, big gold Rolex. And I go up to him and I said, what do you do for work? And he says, "Oh, I'm a real estate agent." And I said, how do you find sales? And he said, "Once I learnt the right skills, it became easy." And this sounds strange, but it was like a light bulb moment came up for me. I thought, once you learn the right skills, it became easy. And I went, I didn't know there was a science to this. I didn't know there was a way of asking questions in a particular order to get certain outcomes. So for me that night, I'm in this house party. There was about 250 people, gorgeous girls, gorgeous guys. I was single at the time. I was like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. And I've just gone, but I've had this light bulb moment. So I run downstairs, sit on my laptop while this house party's on in one of the rooms, and I'm searching for jobs. So searching for jobs, I see this one job at American Express, and it was a sales rep job. And so I literally applied for this one job that night and then went back to the party, didn't think of it again. 2 weeks later, at home, at this point, clearly not very successful, I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix, and I get a call from an O2 number. And I thought it's one of two things. It's Telstra calling me because my phone bill is late, or it's American Express calling regarding the job opportunity. And I answered the phone, and a guy called Craig calls, and he goes, "Hey, it's Craig calling from American Express." And I knew in that next kind of 5 to 10 minutes, the only thing I need to sell was getting myself in for an interview. And that was my whole aim. So I spoke to Craig for 5 to 10 minutes. He said, "Hey, we'd love to interview you for this role." From that point onwards, I spent a huge amount of my time studying the best people in sales. So I studied Grant Cardone. I studied a lot around human psychology, and psychologists obviously asking incredible questions for people to have breakthroughs, transformative breakthroughs in their life. So for me, it was very much about, for the next 10 years, understanding sales methodology, but also going deeper than that and going, let's look at some human behavior and questions that we can ask to get people to understand whether they should go ahead, opposed to you telling whether they should go ahead. So I started American Express. 3 months later, got the role. In the first 2 months, the first 6 months, I broke the company record. In the first year, I was a top 1% revenue generator, not just in Australia, but worldwide, and then backed that up 4 years in a row. And I very much put that down to two things. One, first of all, the work ethic that I developed in recruitment. And second of all, becoming pedantic and obsessed around asking better questions to get better outcomes.
I think I want to pause on that for a second, because one thing that most people, from my perspective at least, and from my experience when it comes to sales, I think it's about learn how to manipulate and learn how to say more. And it's about saying less, but saying the right things and listening very, very well for those things to pinpoint on. And I'd really like to kind of dive into that as far as a framework as to how you developed that skill set as to what questions to ask. Because for me, on my end, that was months and months and months of NLP. That was months and months and months of going through all of the, sales scripting templates, frameworks, and so on to actually come up with something that was concise. And I think over your journey to nail that down to two things of resilience and just pedantic work ethic, that's quite simplistic, and simplistic is very beautiful. There's a lot of beauty to be found there. So let's talk about that. What are some of the frameworks you've kind of played with question asking?
Really good question. The thing, back to that simplicity piece, for anyone listening, I listened to a YouTube video. So for me, coming to a marketing lens, I now have felt like I've done so much self-help that I go in the sales and marketing sphere. It's become quite linear in terms of the things that you learn. I was listening to this beautiful podcast between Rick Rubin. Do you know Rick Rubin?
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah, Rick Rubin and Pharrell Williams. And Pharrell goes, "You're not a producer, you're a reducer." And this whole idea, it's not about actually producing more, doing more. It's actually about how do you do things more simplistic, coming back to your word, and how do you do it better? So for me, even when I'm doing this podcast with you, I've got feedback in the past that I asked too many questions. So I'm actually very poor at podcasts because I find it very uncomfortable being in the position where I'm answering the questions opposed to asking you questions. Yep. So I have a tendency to do that. So for me, when I'm in a sales call, it's very much around understanding the needs of the customer. And again, asking simplistic questions. What do you like about your current provider? What else do you like about your current provider? Is there anything that you would change if you could? If they say no, it sounds like things are going fairly well. If there was one thing that you could change, would there be anything? And at the end of that, it sounds so simple. If they can't identify one problem in their business, it's either two things. I've increased sales pressure somewhere along that call where they don't feel comfortable to divulge their actual problem.
Yep.
Or two, they genuinely don't have an issue. So I'm not even going to say, hey, by the way, this is what I do as a business. Hey, Rhys, thank you for your time. Based on what you've told me, I don't think I can help you, but really appreciate it. And I'm off that call.
Yeah. So you're going to be more likely if you did increase sales resistance there, you're going to get more likely to get a call back because you haven't increased it further. And if you can't help them, you can't help them. It is what it is.
100%.
Yeah. Do you find that in that thought process, one, I will say that I've just noticed that even in just that small little role play there, that your tonality and the way you say words says a lot more than what you say, in which the words you use. I think it might have been Jordan Belfort who might have said this. I can't remember, but there's this whole argument around tonality and body language doing 90% of communication. And I agree fully, but when you speak, words matter 100% of the time. And you seem to do all three well, with body language, tone, and then the words you speak are clear, they're concise, they're direct. And as to your point, you're saying less, right? It's about saying the right things. I think so many people early days in sales, they just get so, especially the closer they get to actually presenting a price, the more words that start to come up. They start to just get further, the closer they get, the further away from the process or the template or the framework that they start to drift.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I think we've all been guilty of it when you kind of know a sale is about to happen and you almost become excited. So you then start divulging, this is going to be the best thing for you, it's going to be amazing. And suddenly you can see the person on the other end of the call going, have I actually made the right decision? Maybe I do need to think about it. So back to your point, Rhys, when you get to the end of the sale, it's about, again, getting them to resell themselves on it. So one of the lines I always use will be like, I'll reveal my price. So I'll reveal the price of a corporate sales training. It's $50,000. So say, to train and support your people over the next 3 months, the investment's going to be $50,000. I guess, how do you make sense of that investment? And so they're now going to resell themselves on why they're going to start telling me why they make sense of that investment. And we go, and then they use this a skeptical tone to push them even further into that decision. So I'm going to go, but hold on a second. But why do you think it will be of benefit to you? And so then suddenly they're going to double down on their answer. So the reason why I share that example with you as a closing technique is because for your listeners, they can actually implement that if they're selling any product or service. But second of all, back to what you just raised or observed, it's very much about what Jordan Belfort does very, very well: communication and tonality, and those subtle pauses for people to really think in their mind about what you're saying.
Yeah. I was talking to my team about this the other day, actually. It was quite interesting. We were talking about just tonality in regards to, you can say anything in 3 different ways and it can be received in 3 different ways. You can say the same words, be very, very, very differently received. But we were talking about the example of someone that says like, I need to think about it. Right. And I said very plainly to my team, it's like, well, if someone needs to think about it, you can literally present to them with this offer. You can say, I used to do that too. Totally understand. Completely get it. But what I used to figure out was that all the information that I needed was in front of me from the person providing me with the information. Nothing new was going to come up. So I had to realize that I had to make decisions a little bit more quickly. And one of my team said like, oh, can I just tell them, like, isn't that a bit condescending? Like, I used to do that too. I'm like, it's all tone. You could sound like an arsehole if you were just like, oh yeah, I used to do that too. But if you sit there and actually play it off even comically, absolute game changer.
Totally great. Totally great. And they see that you're confident in what you're selling. Yeah.
I think that's confidence around price points massive. Like, did you find early in your days with sales that, like, especially as the as the figures became higher and the ticket became larger, did you find that there was ever a point of price resistance on your end of like understanding your own value or the product or company's value? What's going on, everyone? Hope you're well. I won't keep you too long. I know you're hopefully enjoying the podcast. And if you are, let us know. It would be really greatly appreciated if you can jump on, give us a quick 5-star review. You don't even need to stop listening to the show. If you're on Spotify, you can do it in less than 10 seconds. And it does help the show grow a lot. It helps us, get a bit of confirmation bias that we're doing the right thing. And just to say thank you, if you guys do that, we're going to be picking one person every month to guest spot on the podcast that has shared, liked, commented, subscribed, and interacted with what we do. Big thank you. Let's get back to it.
This is, how good are you as a podcaster? This is a perfect segue.
Excellent.
So I listen to this. So I was to get Gavin, and this is the reason I want to tell this story is it comes back to salesmanship. So I knew Gavin Rubenstein well. So for the people that are listening, as I said beforehand, he's on Lux Listing Sydney. He's the face of luxury real estate across Australasia now. I think last year his commission was about $5 million plus. Then he takes a clipping from his team. Incredibly good salesperson within real estate. And I was wanting to get Gav to speak to my online community. So initially, I had one of my community members who runs a tailoring business called Andrew Taylor. I was like, how do I get him into TRG? So I said, Evan just fortuitously reached out to me, one of Gav's employees, and said, hey, mate, I need a new suit. Do you know anyone? And I won't get into the story why he reached out to me, but I said, hey, I've got this guy called Andrew. Andrew, go in. So about like a month later, I was like, I've got Andrew now into TRG. And I called up Andrew and said, hey, mate, when are you next dropping off your suit for Evan? And he goes, I'm in there tomorrow. Why do you ask? I said, hey, what's your BSB and account details? I'm going to wire you $400 now. And Andrew goes, oh, why is that? And I said, oh, can you go to Dan Murphy's, pick me up a bowl of Dom and write a card to Gavin saying, hey, mate, congratulations on all your success. Let's win more, Hugh. So Andy walks into TRG looking like a rock star. He's got 3 beautiful tailored suits in one hand. In the other hand, a bowl of Dom and a card for Gav. He walks in, puts a bowl of Dom on Gav's desk, and then hands the suits off to the guys. And Gav sends me an SMS, like literally, or an Instagram message, like literally 30 minutes later. Hey, Hugh, don't know what I've done to deserve this. You're a real class act, Gav. So I've now, the whole thing, have paid it forward, haven't asked anything in return. And then suddenly I was about to reach out to him about speaking to my community. I thought, I wonder if I'll wait another couple of days, again, not ask for anything just yet. And I saw that Gav was flying up to Brisbane to stay at the Khalil Hotel. Like, it's the hotel to go to in Brisbane. And so Gav's there. My old man's there at the same time. And so I go, I bet you Gav's going to be there. Like, he likes to work out fairly early. So I'm going to go and have breakfast with Dad at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, right next to the pool where the gym is. And I bet you at some point I'll catch Gav walking to the gym. So with Dad and I in conversation, and out of my corner of my eye, I've got horrible eyesight, as you can see, but out of the corner of my eye, maybe I have to see looking a bit more like that so I could actually see. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw Gav walking to the gym, and Gav's got his key card, and he's about to kind of tap on the thing, and I grabbed Dad's key card and kind of opened the pool gate, and Gav, for whatever reason, he couldn't open the gym door. So I kind of am like in a slow jog till I get up to Gav. And as I'm about to get up to him, I kind of slowly walk up. And he looks at me. I look at him. I go, Gav. And he goes, Hugh. And he goes, what are you doing here? I said, oh, like I just kind of spent a bit of time here, like really nonchalant. Yeah. What are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I'm here like with my boys, kind of celebrating. It's been a big year. I said, do you want to get into the gym? And so anyway, I swipe Gav in. Don't ask for anything again. Let him into the gym, and let's say, great seeing you, catch up soon. So anyway, he and his boys trip. The Monday comes around and I go, okay, so this has just worked out perfectly. He's got a bottle of Dom. We've spoken via SMS message. And now I've let him into the gym. He's seen that like I'm a bit of a mover and shaker. So on Monday, I message him and say, hey, mate, by the way, I'd love you to speak to my community. And he goes, mate, I would love to. By the way, what's the fee? And I thought to myself, fuck, I thought I'd done a lot of work to get to a point where he's just going to say, hey, mate, it's free. But he was really hotting up this stage. Season 2 of Lux Listing was about to drop. I already knew him, but I just knew how in demand he was. And so anyway, it was usually my fee's X, but so we call it 15 grand, but I'm happy to charge it to you for 8 grand for 1 hour. 1 hour for 8 grand. And this is at a discounted rate plus GST, so call it 9. And I thought to myself, Jesus Christ, that is a lot of money for 1 hour of your time. And I have gone to all of this work. I'd usually be paying $15,000. So I was just about to send through a contract for a client that I was doing sales training with. And I was charging them I was going to charge them, just call it 20 grand. And I went to myself, you know what? Gav's charging for 1 hour of his time, $8,000 or $15,000. I'm looking at charging $20,000 for kind of 6 weeks of training. I'm going to double it. And if I double the fee and I end up getting it, then I'm going to book Gavin. So I put in the proposal. 48 hours later, the company calls me up, goes, hey, Hugh, great, let's go ahead. And so the one thing that Gavin taught me in that moment, and that $8,000 was it worth every cent, was value your worth. And whatever you decide to put out there in terms of your value and you back it up with conviction, someone will pay for it.
Yep. I'm going to second that infinitely. And I'm going to sum it up with a very simple statement is fucking raise your prices. And it is that simple because I've got a very similar story, not so much on the, I guess, strategical networking side of things, but more so very literally just spending a shit ton of money to make a very expensive lesson in that prices need to be higher. Long story short, man, like we went through a whole process of our entire business model and up until this very point has been growth completely organic, right? We've not marketed. Been very lucky in that space and it's grown very, very well. At some point though, I'm a very firm believer that marketing needs to happen to create predictability, right? So we went down this venture of just hiring an agency. The agency was very much just cookie cutter, plug and play, as is a lot of marketing and in the agency world especially. Long story short, this was a $30,000 venture, paid in full, and they plugged in their model of marketing to our brand that has 10 years of brand equity, 10 years of service and product, and it didn't suit, right? It didn't suit at all. And we were going back and forth and struggling and, really, we were still getting leads after leads and leads through organic, but the marketing, we were getting leads, but they were not leads that we would want to work with. We could have sold to them, definitely could have sold, but they were not aligned with what we do. And there was too much brand friction and too much product friction that we would have to change a lot of what we did to service their needs. So I said, look, we're not going to do this. We pulled the pin. But then I looked at that $30,000. I said, they charged me $30,000 for that. We need to triple our price. Yeah. And we did. We did it overnight. I trained my staff to get more confident with price. And again, not only does more money in your bank account be a good thing, but better cash flow allows you to create better service, better product, more flexibility.
And it's so true because the people that you work with as well, that you charge more money for, have the least amount of problems. The only time where now I've really had to, and even to the point now with sales, there'll be some sales that I'll let go similar to what it sounds like you've done, where you go, it's not my time and energy are the only two commodities that I protect now. They're the only two things that I can't replicate apart from obviously hiring more people. So for me, it means forgoing a smaller deal to preserve my energy and time. I'll do that every day of the week.
100% agree. 100% agree. When you went through that transition of like doubling your price pretty much in one deal, was there any resistance to that? Did you immediately value your time and worth straight away, or was there any imposter syndrome involved?
I think I deep down knew my worth in the sense that a couple of the clients that I'd worked with, we'd increased their business. Like we'd grown their business by, call it 50%, 60%. One of these multinationals that I worked with, we increased their business by 40% in 3 months, their sales. They were already doing millions of dollars worth of sales. So by increasing it by 40%, it was like an extra, I think one of the companies was like $1.2 million we did on average in addition to what they were doing. So call it $3.6 million additionally we did.
With no extra marketing or etc.
No, just through sales training. So, and they paid me $20,000 for that. And I felt like it was a very unfair exchange. However, that was on me because that's what I charged at the time. So every time I was doing the training, I had this, and there's business owners that are listening to this now that are feeling frustrated. You know that you go above and beyond, is that when you actually charge more, you can actually undersell, over deliver. But you can oversell and over deliver, where you go, I'm getting paid for what I'm worth, but in that, I'm not even telling the client all the additional things that I'm going to invite them to, provide them with. So you actually feel like it's a fair exchange, and the client comes out even happier because they go, I didn't know that Rhys was going to do all these additional things for me. That wasn't in the contract. So initially, to your point, was it innately kind of did it feel like there was a conflict? Absolutely, because as you know, change in anything is hard, but once you overcome that and get success on it 2 or 3 times, it suddenly feels normal. And again, now I'm going, hey, with my one-on-one coaching, I actually don't think it's enough. We've had too many case studies now of people being successful. I would rather give a full refund to someone, but then charge more money to get them in, than to keep my price at the same level.
Yep. I totally agree. And I think that
There's
probably
a big, sorry to interrupt, but big guarantees, big claims, but being able to back it up and support that.
Well, that's what I was about to say. If you're able to back your service and product with a guarantee, one, from a sales perspective, you can remove all sales, resistance and problems, but then more so to the point that you can actually start to hold yourself accountable to a degree that you have to deliver on what you said you would,
Totally
if not
great.
do more. Yeah, it's
Totally
an
great.
interesting space, man, because I think a lot of people in the product and service industry don't back themselves with any sort of guarantee. It's interesting to hear that you would rather give someone a refund at a lower price than keep them where they are.
100%. But the other thing I'll say is, like, I've got to the point where it's like at American Express, Fortune 100, like a Fortune 100 company, top 1% revenue generator worldwide, went into a multi-million-dollar retail business, grew that by 36% in 5 months, went into a bricks and mortar business club in the middle of a global pandemic and grew that business by over 280%. The business should have died. It got so big that Mark Boris has now bought it out after I've left the business. So I go, I have got the runs on the board. I have done this time and time again that I go, I have the confidence in myself to charge that. However, if you're a business owner out there and you're going, should I be charging for more for my product and service? You really need to congruently go, have I got the runs on the board with what I'm doing? And if you have, absolutely charge more for your product or service. However, if you're still building, then don't lose sales trying to figure out your product offering, trying to get it better. But if you've nailed your product offering, charge more. But if you're still in that kind of figuring out stage, you haven't got enough testimonies, you haven't worked with enough clients, I'd say for you, you've still got some grinding to do.
Yeah, I say that to my mentoring clients all the time, that the industry as a whole, every industry for that matter, will tell you that you need to niche down and you need to get specific. And I fundamentally disagree with it in the early days of startup. I feel like cash flow is king, and sometimes you just need runs on the board and you need to deal with the people that perhaps aren't the people you want to work with, but
100%.
are they the people that are willing to pay you? And like you just said, it's runs on the board. I think there's probably a big conversation to be had around your 1% of revenue generators in the Fortune 100. Did you come up with any sort of framework, or can you look back in hindsight with a framework of what allowed you to do that in actually generating such a huge volume of sales?
So the big one was very much around figuring out a script that worked. So again, even when I'm doing coaching, when I'm selling to corporates now, there's times where I'm tired. I've worked 12-hour days. Marlo and I, my beautiful wife, we've gone out and we've had a big night, or it's been a big weekend, or I get up to go to the gym every morning at 4:30. I'm stuffed at 3:00. Like, I'm exhausted. And so for me, even when I'd be on a Zoom call like this, I know that I might be a bit off. I know that my tonality might be slightly off kilter, and those small things can make a massive impact. So when the potential objections come at the end, or I'm going, have I lost where I'm going in this call? I will still have up, I won't even see their face. I will have my list of questions on the screen. They'll think that I'm looking at them, but I'll be looking at a script. And it's more just that reassurance that I know that if I get lost, I can come back to it. So in the space of 6 months, I identified a really kind of good frame of questions to ask to get the customer to answer questions, to guide them on the path to whether that they were on the right product or service, opposed to me telling that.
Yep.
So after 6 months, once I developed this system, it's great to be able to do it yourself, but where really you start to know if you can replicate it is when you start training it.
Yep.
So the company then developed a one-of-a-kind role, which was I was a sole contributor similar to a real estate agent, but I also ran and supported a team. So that was a team of 96 people across Australia and the Philippines. And effectively, I just rinsed and repeat those results, and suddenly the team grew exponentially from where we could grow from 20 staff to 96 staff. But coming back to your question, it was very much about creating a framework and going, once I ask this question, where can the customer go? They're going to go one of two ways here. Based on those responses, how do I get them to ask, how do I ask better questions for them to come up with the answers?
Yep.
And in 80% of the cases or 60% of the cases, that will lead to a sale. And in 40% of the cases, we will both identify this isn't the right product or service. And I can happily, without any sales pressure, without any kind of remorse of the sale falling over, go, this is genuinely not in your best interest.
Yep. Yeah. I think there's something I want to pinpoint there for everyone at home is the word framework as opposed to script. I think this is something that, like, early in my days of like creating and doing sales flows and stuff, that I would fall back onto a script. And, you know, the big thing that I said to my team now is, like, for a script to work, you need to learn the script. Actors don't read a script, they memorize a script, right? You need to know it, which under pressure for someone that's not trained in acting, quite challenging, right? Yeah. So that's exactly a similar thing that I've kind of built out is a framework, and it's the what I've called it is a mining for gold or mining for dirt. They're two very different things. You can ask as many dirt mining questions as you need to uncover the gold, but there's going to be three major questions that you need to ask and get answers to for us to move into a seamless sales process. And it seems as though for you, you had like a select few questions as well that, you know, you found worked well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That, and then doing enough reps to know the questions that would be answered. And then when they would say, like, you know, listening for those key words. Yeah, Hugh, things are going fairly well. Rhys, when you say fairly well, what do you mean by fairly well? And really unpacking that. So there would be those cues where it's like, that's not a script at that point. It's like listening for that key word and kind of then diving deep on that and getting them to feel the pain of that. Because when you jump on a call, they might have just won a big deal, but for the last 6 months, they haven't won any deals. Yep. So when you actually have an opportunity in the conversation to get them to actually feel their current situation at that time where they really are, then you need to drill down on it. So yes, you need the framework, but then what I think you're alluding to also is having enough curiosity to listen for those key words and then diving deeper on it.
Yeah. And that's again, you're throwing out all the perfect words, man. Like curiosity, right, in itself is a sales tactic 101. Like rather than creating judgment around like, oh, fairly well, like you could be doing better. That's very attacking. And that's what I feel like a lot of old school sales methodologies follow the line of is like challenge them directly rather than be curious with your inquisition and go, okay, well, that let's unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by that? And just that simple phrase of what do you mean? Like you said, it can kind of lead the horse to water, so to speak, and make you the logical step forward to solve the problem.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Is there anything that you, like over your time in sales, any sort of objections or maybe questions that were asked back at you that really stumped you?
So when I ever felt like I was stumped on a question, what I would get the person to do is start. I'd go, so why did you ask that question? So I'm now getting them to explain what led you to, Rhys, what led you to ask that question just now? So like, I don't know the answer just now. Oh, because like I'm a bit more curious about that. And talk me through, I guess, why you're curious around that. Like, why is that important to you now, though? And then so again, it's like I'm now playing the psychologist role of understanding where they're coming from. And then at some point, I can unpack that and help them work through it like a coach. But until I understand where it's coming from, I'm never going to respond. I'm going to ask better questions.
Yeah. One thing, Hugh is on the money here, guys, because one thing that you guys need to remember when looking at sales, the person asking the questions is the person in power. If they're firing questions back at you, challenging them and meeting them with a question, just as Hugh has just said, like, oh, where is that coming from? What makes you ask that? It allows them to clarify what they actually need help with and why they're asking it, rather than just trying to get you in a corner and answer a yes, no question. It becomes very, very hard to back out of as well.
Totally agree.
Yeah, man. Is there any, like, let's talk, I think just more so some practical application. What are some of the most common objections you have when dealing with, I guess, high ticket price points? And then any that you can remember of your time in, like smaller tickets?
Cool. So just one more time, can you repeat that question?
Some common objections you have. Let's just go with the top 3 and we'll round it out there, bro.
Cool. Top 3 objections. So usually the top 3 objections are very much around price. The second one obviously is around I need to speak to my business partner. And the third one is I need to think about it.
Yep.
So very much for me, it's about pre-handling those objections from the start. So just to give you one example around your business partner, I'll ask you a question early on, but like, so Rhys, talk me through your decision-making process. And so you're going to go, oh, like when I think of things, it usually takes me a bit of time, or I usually need to concur with my wife. And what does your wife feel about you generating more leads so you can grow your business? And then so if he gives me a commitment at that time, oh yeah, of course, she's really supportive of this. Okay, so it must feel really empowering, you having the ability to make decisions on your own.
Yeah.
And now once he says, yes, I feel really empowered to make decisions on my own, he at the end of this conversation can't say, hey, I need to speak to my wife. Hey, I need to speak to my business partner. So for me and the best salespeople, it's all about knowing the objections that have come at the end, and then how do you have enough ammunition to have pre-handle those objections. So when they come up, if they do come up again, you have already handled them and you can help them make sense of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It does come down to either price, decision maker, or time. And they're all, like you said, if you can handle it in your pre-frame or early on in that call of like their decision-making process, how they actually think about things, what their financial statuses are, etc. You can really cap that out pretty early. I fully agree.
100%.
Man, is there any, where can people find you and what is it that you do for people now? Let's give you a little plug and then we'll finish it up there.
Cool. So three things that I do. I've got a company called the Digital Sales Community where business owners come together to weekly upskill on sales. The second thing is one-on-one coaching with business owners to help them grow and scale. And the third one is corporate sales training. So if you want kind of more information around that, go to the digitalsalescommunity.com and you'll be guided through that. And the best place to find me is very much probably on LinkedIn, where I'm most active, or alternatively Instagram.
Excellent. We'll put your handles on the screen, and for anyone at home, we'll put them in the description on the Spotify as well. Hugh, a big thank you, bro. I know it's been a bit of a different experience trying to jump on Zoom and figure out where we're supposed to be, but nonetheless, been a great podcast, and thank you for your time, bro.
Hey, mate. Love being here. Thanks, Rhys.
It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.